Okay, hi guys. We're going to be wrapping up the sciences relatively soon. So, one of the things that TOK is really interested in are the scope and limitations of particular knowledge systems. So, like, what is this area of knowledge really good at knowing, and then what are the limitations of its potential knowledge, right? So, like if you talk about something like the arts, right? The arts might be really good at knowing about feelings, or how to transfer ideas or feelings to like other people, but maybe it's not the best at figuring out like how the universe works, right? So, when we talk about knowledge systems, we're talking about the way that an area of knowledge pursues truth and knowledge in that field of study, right? And then the processes behind that. So we know that the sciences are all about the scientific method and scientific methodology, right? And so this week, I want you to explore kind of the way that scientists think about other things that are not just the sciences. So, taking a scientific mindset and a scientific perspective of the world, and then trying to apply it outward, and then how we interpret the world through that. And we're going to be looking specifically at the writing of this guy over here. His name is Richard Dawkins. And here, we'll watch this short little 4-minute video of him. A really quick caveat: I'm not endorsing his claims. I'm not saying that I support what he is communicating here. It is Richard Dawkins speaking for Richard Dawkins. I'm just hitting the play button so that way you can see what he has to say.
I'm very often asked what is the Darwinian survival value of religion, and I usually reply that may be the wrong question. You may have to rephrase the question, and it may turn out to be not the survival value of religion, but the survival value of something else in the brain, which shows itself, manifests itself as religion under the right circumstances. Now, a good analogy which I've used is the question, why do moths fly into candle flames? Now, you could describe that behavior as suicidal behavior in moths, self-immolation behavior in moths, kamikaze behavior in moths. That would be one way of phrasing the question, but it's the wrong question. If you actually look at the way moth and insect eyes generally work, insects use celestial objects like the sun or the moon or the stars as compasses. It's important, it's valuable, there is survival value for any animal in moving in a straight line. If an animal wants to move in a straight line, a very good way to do it is to keep a celestial object at a fixed angle, and that's easy to do in insects because they have compound eyes, where, very unlike our eyes, where the eyes as a whole is a sort of hemisphere of little tubes looking outwards. And so you can maintain a fixed angle to something like a star or the moon by keeping the moon in one ommatidium. If you do that, because rays from the moon come from optical infinity, they are parallel. And so if you keep the moon in one ommatidium, you will fly in a straight line. It might be, say, 30 degrees. Keep the moon at 30 degrees to your right. And that works, and that's valuable, and that's what many insects do. However, candles are not at optical infinity. Candles are close. The rays of light from a candle are therefore not parallel, they're radiating out. If you maintain a fixed angle of, say, 30 degrees to the rays that are emitted from a candle, you will describe a neat logarithmic spiral into the candle flame. Kill yourself. So these moths are not killing themselves. It's not suicidal behavior. It's a misfiring of a natural, normal behavior which before the invention of candles would have worked. And it still does work the vast majority of time because most of the time in the dark, a moth is not subjected to artificial light. So ask the right question. The right question is not what's the survival value of suicidal behavior in moths. The right question is what's the survival value of maintaining a fixed angle to a celestial object, and then it's easy to come up with the right answer. Proximate questions are questions which you answer with the form, the physiology of the animal, the nervous system of the animal, the hormones of the animal. Things happen in the animal's nervous system which cause it to do something. That's the proximal answer. The ultimate question is, what's the survival value? What's the benefit to the animal? What's the benefit to the animal's genes in particular to make it do that? An old teacher of mine at Oxford, J.R. Baker, used the example of breeding seasons in birds. Why do birds breed at certain times of year? The ultimate answer is it's beneficial to them to have breeding seasons because they produce chicks at the right time of year to cash in on the optimal food supply. That's the ultimate answer. The proximate answer is that they breed at a certain time of year because day length is changing and their hormonal system, their nervous system is geared to day length. And that's the proximal reason why they breed at a certain time.
So there we go. So Richard Dawkins, this guy, he is probably right now one of like the top 3 or 4 most famous science communicators in the world. Science communicators are people that are professional scientists, but also spend a lot of time talking to the public about the sciences. These are guys like Bill Nye the Science Guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Macchio, and then Dawkins. These guys spend their time trying to make the world more scientifically literate. Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist who also has dabbled in ethics and religion, well, or the adversarial position of to religion, human behavior and psychology. He's kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything, but he is really known as being an evolutionary biologist. Wrote a very important book quite a while ago called The Selfish Gene, and about how animal behavior is really about supporting genotypes. Anyways, all of that to say, he is a scientist who brings his scientific perspective on understanding and applies it to the rest of the entirety of the world. This week, I'm going to ask you to read a letter that Richard Dawkins wrote to his daughter. It was written a while ago. His daughter's grown now, but he wrote it to his daughter whenever she was 10. And it is about how to what to believe and how to think. And I'm giving you some questions to answer with it, because what I want you to explore here is Dawkins is presenting for us a very regimented scientific way of understanding the world. And I want you to really consider what the benefits, but then also what maybe some of the problems are whenever you take only reason and rationality as your approach to understanding existence. And so I think that when you really get into the letter and you start seeing his examples, it'll make more sense what I am saying here about how there are some ways that taking this scientific perspective on like understanding and knowledge and applying it to everything else besides just science is helpful. And then there are some ways that maybe you're going to miss the point of things. And I think that there are a couple of examples where you'll see Dawkins kind of missing the point of things in this letter. And so that's basically going to be your assignment this week. I'm not going to do a big long lecture this week, mainly because if you want me to be honest, most of you haven't done the stuff from last week. And by most, I mean basically anybody. Let's see. The film viewing, I've had 4 of you finish viewing the film. Let's not even talk about the stuff from earlier, like the week 4 stuff. Actually, week 4, sorry, the Wolfpack stuff would be week 3. The stuff from the Wolfpack in week 3, I only got 3 people that have turned that in. So, I mean, a lot of you guys are pretty backlogged on work here. So, I'm not going to do a big, long lecture this week. I do want you to kind of read this letter, though, and think about the implications and the limitations for how the sciences try and understand human existence and the world, and what it means to kind of only think like a scientist does all of the time, and some of the ways that that might be helpful and some of the ways that that might not be helpful. Like for instance, Let me pull it up here real quick. Hold on. So, for instance, really quick, I'm going to show you a clip. This is from a film called Freakonomics, which is based off of a book that covers the same concepts, and it is somebody using data analysis and data analytics to try and understand human behavior and our world and some of the conclusions that that they reach. And here, they've decided to use data and analytics to try and make a case about the social value of abortion, right? Which we know is a very bombastic issue where people have deeply rooted personal beliefs, right? And so we'll watch this real quick and then we'll talk about it, and then I'm going to be done.
You've been given a great gift, George. A chance to see what the world would be like without you.
What I believe to be true, and I think the evidence supports it, is a hypothesis which many people find jarring and disturbing, but nonetheless I believe is probably right.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
In 1973, in a case called Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruled that abortion, which had previously been legal in only 5 U.S. states, would now be legal nationwide. Precisely the opposite of what happened in Romania.
The legalization of abortion in the 1970s was one of the primary reasons why crime fell in the 1990s, because a whole generation of potentially unwanted children were never born because of the legalization of abortion. And if you fast forward 20 years to the point in time when they were going to be at their peak crime ages, they simply weren't there to do the crime.
You see, George, you really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away?
The trouble, of course, is that life isn't like the movies. For so many children who, without Roe v. Wade, would have been born in 1973, their lives might not have been the wonderful lives of being born into a loving family in yesterday's small-town America. Rather, theirs would be the far harder road of being born into a potentially unwanting household in America's crumbling inner cities or forsaken heartland. Levitt's conclusion? As much as half of the 1990s crime drop was an unintended consequence of Roe v. Wade.
The theory behind it is actually quite simple. Unwanted children have been shown to be at high risk for crime. With legalized abortion, fewer unwanted children were born. Therefore, the theory would be that there would be less crime 15 to 20 years later when those cohorts reach their peak crime ages. And the data support that hypothesis quite strongly. If you follow the data, there were 5 states that legalized abortion 3 years before Roe versus Wade, and about 15 years later, their crime begins to fall 3 years before the rest of the country. Then, if you look at the states where abortion was not just legal, but easily available to people who wanted to get them, 16, 17 years after Roe versus Wade, you see a 30% difference between the states doing a lot of abortions and the ones who are doing very few. Finally, all of the effect we see in the divergence in crime, all of that is concentrated among people under the age of 25, people young enough to have been exposed to legalized abortion. People older than age 25, there's no difference whatsoever between the high abortion states and the low abortion states. And I think in some ways that's the best evidence we have that legalized abortion is responsible for a big chunk of the decline in crime.
Levitt's controversial theory.
So here is a prime example. Oh wait, I gotta make myself big again. Hold on. You need to be able to see my beautiful face. There we go. So here's a prime example of what it looks like whenever you try to bring a scientific understanding of the world and ideas to really complex, nuanced issues, right? You just reduce everything to data. There was no discussion here about morality or ethics or religious considerations or any of that, right? It was just simply about abortion, drop in crime, and the correlation between the two, and the degree of which you could possibly attribute causation, right? And this is the kind of way that the sciences would view everything in the world. And I think that there's a lot that could be discussed about whether or not that is an appropriate or good way of understanding reality. I think there's an argument to be made that it might be a very highly efficient way of understanding reality, but then also there's a pretty decent argument to be made that it's a very limited perspective on human existence. So, anyways, this week you've got that letter to read from Dawkins to his daughter, where he is describing how she should kind of formulate her views and opinions of the worlds in the ways that like he would like her to choose to believe in things and not believe in things. And then you'll have some questions to answer. And then when you're done with that, you know, most of you need to go catch up with the other TOK work. Those of you that aren't, I suppose you can dedicate that time to your other classes. I will be online, I think, this week. I'll see you guys on Thursday, I think. I think it's Thursday this week for you guys. So I'll be doing a live session on Thursday if you guys want to pop in and see me. So yeah, that's that. If you have any questions, let me know.